しょう。ナモアミダ仏。
ナモアミダ仏。
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 ナモアミダ仏。ナマンダナマンダナマンダナマンダ。Hello, and welcome to the Tri-State Denver Buddhist Temple's YouTube service for Sunday, April 18th, 2021. We are so glad you're here to join us today. Service order for this service will be first, Sanbutsuge. Sanbutsuge can be found on page 53 in the Blue Denver Service Book. We will then have a reading of the Three Treasures. The Three Treasures can be found on page 106 in the Blue Denver Service Book. Finally, we will have a Dharma talk and reading of the Gabunsho. If you don't have a copy of the Blue Denver Service Book, don't worry, because if you look in the description below, you'll find a PDF hyperlink and where you can get your very own copy of the Blue Denver Service Book. And feel free to print it off and put it in a binder if you would like. We're very happy you came to join us today, and please live your life with the happiness which the Nimbutsu brings us all.
戦ガサブ在所法可動生じ未不下な不正上位解任生じ如是三昧知恵以上五世特分不行志願一切空空一切大安慶始運部百千の苦門無用来生修行語者供養一切使徒諸無不如愚道見性不客非如語者諸分世界無不可け無修せの光明師匠変死諸行如是生じ異人難女ヨガサム国土第一五種奇妙道場長善国領内容任務当社をガト愛民道断一切実法内生信念上場意図がこ慶楽庵の公務神妙善が心象本願の日力勝
所欲、自法生存、知恵無限、上領子孫、死が信用、軽量心死、食六中、我行精進、忍辱不軽。
ナマナブナマナブナ平等性祭の本盆大心往生安楽。ナモ阿弥陀仏。
ナモ阿弥陀仏。
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 ナモ阿弥陀仏。ナマンダ、ナマンダ、ナマンダ、ナマンダ、ナマンダ。
Three treasures. Hard is it to be born into human form. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we hear it. If we do not deliver ourselves in the present life, no hope is there that we shall be freed from suffering and sorrow in the ocean of birth and death. Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we all together absorb into ourselves the principle of the way to enlightenment and become aware of his supreme teaching. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we all together be submerged in the depths of his doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we all together become units in true accord in the life of harmony, in the spirit of universal brotherhood, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Even through ages of myriads of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of Tathagata's teaching. Namo Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Buddha.
Please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Buddha. 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 Hello, and welcome to the Dharma Talk for this week's YouTube service. Today, I'm going to be reading a small section from this book right here, called Shinran and His Religion of Pure Faith. It was written in 1937 by Reverend Gendo Nakai. And right off the bat, you can already tell that in the title, there's some words that don't really seem to fit within the Jodo Shinshu common vernacular that we use today. And that's okay, because this book is a product of the time and the place and the conditions in which it was written in. So I'm going to read a little section from this book about part of Shinran Shonen's life. Shinran Shonen, the founder of our sect, Hongan Jiha Jodo Shinshu. So sit back and listen and hear the words that may seem a little out of place, and we're going to talk about them a little bit, along with the lesson which is in this book. So this starts off with Shinran in Inada. Whilst in Inada, Shinran often went from one village to another teaching his faith. Some miles to the south, above the village, there rises a mountain called Itajikiyama, which is so steep and dark that in those days few travelers dared to make their way there. Shinran used to climb over this mountain in his journeys, never dreaming of any danger. He confidently held that if one who believed in Amida Nyorai was always moved in his sight, no matter where they went, no danger could obstruct their way. In the vicinity, there lived a Yamabushi, an itinerant priest named Benin, who performed wonders in curing diseases and predicting coming events. Hence his great influence among the ignorant peasantry. As Shinran came from Echigo to spread the true religion, the people under his influence gradually began to turn their thoughts of seeking mere worldly goods to the pursuit of the true way to eternal life. For this reason, Benin began to lose numbers of his followers. He was so indigent he resolved to take Shinran's life. At last, when Shinran was expected to pass through the mountain, the revengeful votary lay in ambush. Supported by his comrades, Benin waited in hiding in thick bushes, bow and arrow in hand and long sword in his girdle, for several days in succession. But he never saw Shinran. For when one waited in the valley, the other followed the high ridge over the mountaintop, and when one lay waiting in the mountaintop, the other went far below. For his failure, Benin was more provoked until he decided to go to the hermitage in Inada and kill Shinran in one blow. One day, Benin, opposingly attired and well-armed, appeared before the cell and demanded to see Shinran, whose disciples, in alarm, begged their master to confine themselves to his room. Shinran, quite unmoved, as if nothing could happen, came out by himself and received the visitor. At first sight, Benin was overcome by Shinran's power and, unconscious of what he did, prostrated himself at the latter's feet. After some moments, he was able to collect himself to his own dreadful purpose for which he had come. With tears of repentance, he implored for Shinran's forgiveness. Shinran listened to him speechless and then preached the message of Amida Nyorai, whose heart receives anyone who turns to him and confesses his sins. Benin laid down his arms, stripped himself of his clothes of a wandering monk, and placed himself in the true care of Shinran Shonen. Converted to the true religion, he became one of Shinran's most loyal disciples. After his regeneration in faith, he was called by the new name, Myoho-bo. From this time on, he was always seen at the Inada cell as a novice, humbly and eagerly listening to his master's instructions. One day, as he accompanied Shinran through Itajikiyama, the mountain where he might have killed his master, he was so deeply moved by the thought of the change wrought by the past and the present of his life that he expressed his thought in poem. He composed the following. The mountain rises as before. Its paths still wend, remain unchanged. But oh, how changed my soul is now. Years later, a cherry tree was planted to commemorate Benin's conversion, and beside the poem, inscribed on a stone, was put up in sight, so all who visit the place might be converted to the true religion, as they would hear this story handed down from days of yore. So, first off, there's a whole lot of language issues in this story. We don't talk about sin ever. So that's the use of Christian words to try to tell a Jodo Shinshu story. And I think I understand what Reverend Nakai was trying to say in that period of time, because in the 30s, English language scholarship within Jodo Shinshu was pretty much non-existent. And so in the tradition of Buddhism, he came into a place and tried to use the language that existed to explain the faith structure that he was coming from to other people, and to spread this Jodo Shinshu faith. That being said, sometimes you don't know the words that you're using have cultural underpinnings and cultural meanings, and may not mean exactly what it is that the dictionary says it means. And so when someone says sin in North America, it's not just their ignorance or their klesha, greed, anger, and ignorance, but rather something deeper to the soul of what someone is. And for us Jodo Shinshu Buddhists, the concept isn't solidified in the way that it might be for a Christian. In that we know that we constantly live embraced with our greed, anger, and ignorance. And so when Benin came to Shinran, what he was saying was, I am greedy, I am angry. Obviously, he wanted to kill Shinran, and I am ignorant. And when he came and confronted Shinran, I think part of what Benin must have seen was not some amazing, supernatural, glowing countenance, saying like, oh, wow, this is an amazing, wonderful person, but kindness and understanding. And I think that is the kindness and understanding that comes from this Jodo Shinshu Nembutsu faith that say, Namo Amida Butsu. And by saying that Namo Amida Butsu and then truly reflecting upon who you are as a person in order to reflect upon your movement from this is something I do, but rather this is something I do with Amida, and this is a path I walk with Amida, that provides a centeredness and a calmness and a radiance that is settlement in this Nembutsu. So Benin was a Yamabushi, and Yamabushi still exists to today. You can go to Japan and there's still Yamabushi, and you see elements of Buddhism, and you see elements of what's now called Shintoism, and they will climb mountains, and they will not eat, they will not bathe, they will not shave, they do all kinds of really interesting practices. And they're oftentimes good people, but they practice for the here and now. They're worried about, especially for here in Benin, and what he was doing for the people of Inada is he was trying to predict the future for them. He was trying to use incantations to cure diseases. But he didn't say, I will help you escape from this pain that is samsara, the ocean of birth and death that causes us pain because of our attachments and because of our ignorance. And so this becomes the drift between what Benin was doing and what Shinran was doing. Because Shinran never walked around and said, hey, you're going to become rich, or I'm going to cure your disease because of Namo Amida Butsu. What Shinran says is this is the medicine for you and your rebirth, Namo Amida Butsu. So put your entire thought process into Amida and into the Nembutsu and live your life knowing that your birth is settled. So these are two different mechanisms happening. And what the story of Benin really shows is how our attachments to how we think things should be can then provide violence and can then provide greed and provide this anger. And so Benin's attachments to the power that he had, to the position that he had within the society of Inada, was threatened. And so he, like many people, say, I'm going to remove this threat completely. I'm going to eliminate it. I'm going to kill Shinran. I'm going to lie in wait with my bow and arrow and my really huge dope sword, because that's how I vision it. I imagine he has like a 6-foot sword, because in my mind, that's what he has. And he waits to kill Shinran. Because if he kills him, obviously this message, which is so weak that it dies with Shinran, will go away. And that my power will be maintained. And so he waits and he tries and he goes to kill Shinran and he can't. So he says, I'm going to face this problem head on. I'm going to walk up, I'm going to pull my sword out, and I'm going to strike this problem down. And Shinran, instead of responding back with violence, instead of drawing a sword that I assume he didn't have, he looks and says, Namo Amida Buddha. He shows the true faith, the true shinjin of a Nembutsu follower. And he faces the person who wants to harm them, who wants to kill him, directly in the eye, and says, have you heard of the Nembutsu? Have you heard of Amida Buddha? Because Amida, even though you want to kill me right now, even though I am a priest walking through the mountains sharing this story of Amida Buddha, Amida embraces you without hesitation. Turn yourself from your self-power practice, from what you're trying to do, to look and hear Namo Amida Butsu, and know that it lives in your life whether you think you are worthy or not. Because you are. So Benin, a man who was completely dead set on killing Shinran, then realizing that Shinran is his friend in the Nembutsu. And they become friends for the rest of their lives. And Benin becomes dedicated to Shinran. And becomes dedicated to this Namo Amida Butsu teachings. So today, it's really easy to read this book by Reverend Nakai and say, that's not language I want to hear. That's not Buddhist. That's not everything else. But he was working with the tools that he had at the time. And so just because it talks about things like, pure faith, which is not how we translate things today, doesn't change the intention and the desire to spread this Nembutsu teaching or true religion. These are not words that were native to Jodo Shinshu, but rather is the evolution of this teaching in North America. And I think this book has a lot to teach me. And probably a lot to teach you too. Because this shows the change that has happened over just 85 years. Now, this was written before World War II. This was written before a lot of things happened. But it shows in still that short period of time how we have been able to share and teach the Dharma, how we have been able to come together as a Sangha has changed so much. I imagine if Reverend Nakai saw this YouTube service today, first he'd be like screaming because he's like, what's going on? Why are these people on this screen that's really easy to see and probably touching it? Because, TVs. And then secondly, he would be amazed, I think, that technology has allowed us to spread this teaching in such a long ways that the language that he uses becomes suspect. And that's some pretty amazing progress. And so I think the reason that I decided this would be a good story to talk about today is thinking about all of the barriers that we have as people, as a Sangha, as Buddhists have placed up in front of us. And there are many ways to react to these barriers. But I think for us as Jodo Shinshu Buddhists, the best thing that we can do is say Namo Amida Butsu and try to share this true, as Reverend Nakai would say, this true religion and this true faith with other people, and allow the Nembutsu to glow out of us, to allow this faith to be spread to all those that stand in front of us. and to show the love and compassion that we feel from Amida Buddha to all those around us, to show that you're okay. Even if you hate me, Amida still has a place for you. Even if you want to strike me down, Amida still has a place for you. Even if you're not sure that you belong, Amida still has a place for you. So, Reverend Nakai, thank you for teaching me. And hopefully the Sangha and you guys all out there can get something from these very old words. And today I would like to close out service by reading Gobunsho, the traditions of Shinran Shonin. So if you could please bow your head slightly and listen to the words in reverence. Shonin ichiru no gon kanke no omumuki wa shinjin no motte honto serare soro. Sono yue wa moromoro no zogyo wa nage sutette isshin ni mida ni kimyo sureba. Fukashigi no ganrike to shite buten no kata yori ojo wa jijo sashime tammo. Sono kurai o ichinen toki ni shoujo shijo tammo shaku shi. Sono ue no shomyo nenbutta yorai waga ojo wa sadame tamai shi. Goon hojin no nenbutto kokoro bekinari. Anakashi ko. Anakashi ko. Please join me in Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu.